The snow fell in thick curtains across the Karathi frontier, each flake a silent witness to the carnage that had unfolded in the frozen valleys below. Sergeant Lyra Thane dragged herself through the entrance of the den, leaving a trail of crimson behind her. Her armor hung in shredded pieces, exposing wounds that would have killed most species 3 times over. But humans were different. Humans were stubborn. The Karathi cubs had been watching from the deeper shadows of the cave, their 6 eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. They had never seen a human this broken before. Lyra collapsed against the stone wall, her breathing ragged, her rifle still clutched in trembling hands even though its power cell had been spent hours ago. Still alive, she whispered to no one in particular, or perhaps to herself, a reminder that despite everything, her heart still beat. The Karathi were a proud species, evolved from pack predators on a world where mercy meant extinction. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dense fur that shifted from silver to deep charcoal, with powerful limbs ending in retractable claws. They had joined the Galactic Coalition only 60 cycles ago, and humans had been their first true allies. Not because of treaties or trade agreements, but because Sergeant Lyra Thane had done the impossible. 3 days ago, when the Zelkari raiders descended upon the Karathi settlement, it was supposed to be a simple patrol. Lyra and her squad were there as peacekeepers, advisors. But the Zelkari didn't discriminate. They came for resources and they came for slaves. When the attack began, the adult Karathi fought with savage determination, but they were outnumbered. The raiders had orbital support, plasma cannons, and something the Karathi had never faced before: tactical drones that hunted with algorithm precision. Lyra's squad was decimated in the first hour. But when she saw the Zelkari advancing toward the nursery den where 12 Karathi cubs huddled together, something ancient and primal ignited within her. Humans had been prey once, millennia ago on Earth. They had been hunted by things with sharper teeth and stronger claws, but they had survived by being clever, by being relentless, and by protecting their young at any cost. She had held the line alone for 17 hours. The Zelkari eventually retreated when Karathi reinforcements arrived, but not before Lyra had expended every round of ammunition, exhausted every charge pack, and resorted to fighting with nothing but a combat knife and the environmental debris she could weaponize. The drones lay scattered around the den entrance like broken insects. The Zelkari dead numbered 43. Lyra had saved all 12 cubs. Now, as she sat bleeding in their den, her vision beginning to blur, she wondered if this was where her story ended. She had always imagined dying in battle, but she'd hoped it would be quick. This slow fading felt like a betrayal of everything she'd fought for. Movement in the shadows caught her attention. The smallest cub, Rune, she remembered his name, emerged from the darkness on uncertain legs. His fur was still downy soft, marked with the silver patterns that would darken as he matured. His eyes, all 6 of them, were fixed on her with an intensity that seemed far too old for his young frame. Rune approached slowly, his head lowered in a gesture that among Karathi meant respect and trust. In his small jaws he carried something, a pelt, thick and warm, torn from one of the sleeping alcoves. He dragged it across the stone floor with determination, his claws clicking softly, until he reached Lyra's feet. The cub dropped the pelt and pushed it toward her with his snout, then looked up at her expectantly. Lyra stared at the offering, her pain-fogged mind struggling to understand. Among the Karathi, pelts were precious. They represented family, warmth, survival. To offer one's pelt to another was to share one's very existence. "Rune," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm okay, little one. You keep it." But the cub didn't move. Instead, he sat back on his haunches and made a soft chirping sound, the Karathi equivalent of concern. Then, one by one, the other cubs emerged from the shadows. They had been watching, learning. Each carried their own pelt, dragging them across the stone with solemn purpose. They formed a circle around Lyra, placing their offerings at her feet, on her lap, across her shoulders. The warmth began to seep into her frozen limbs, and with it came something else, something she hadn't felt since the battle began. Hope. The 12th cub, a female with particularly bright silver markings, climbed carefully onto Lyra's lap despite the blood and damage to the human's armor. She curled up against Lyra's chest, her small body vibrating with a purr-like rumble that the Karathi young made when they felt safe. That's when Lyra felt it, the crack in the dam she'd built around her emotions. She had held herself together through the battle, through the pain, through the slow, limping journey back to the den. But this simple act of kindness from creatures who barely understood death themselves shattered her resolve. A smile broke across her face, small at first, then growing. It hurt. Her split lip protested and her broken ribs sent spikes of agony through her torso. But she didn't care. Tears mixed with the blood and dirt on her cheeks as she looked down at the cubs who had covered her in their most precious possessions. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, little ones." Rune chirped again and pressed his small body against her leg, his warmth joining the others. The cubs didn't understand war or sacrifice or duty. They only understood that the strange furless creature had stood between them and death, and now she needed them. In that moment, Sergeant Lyra Thane understood something profound about humanity's place in the galaxy. They weren't the strongest species, nor the fastest or the most technologically advanced, but they had something that transcended biology, an overwhelming capacity to care, to protect, to form bonds across the impossible distances between different forms of life. And sometimes when a human fell, those bonds would reach back across that distance and pull them home. As her vision began to clear and her enhanced metabolism started winning the battle against her injuries, Lyra allowed herself to rest among the cubs. Her smile remained even as exhaustion finally claimed her. She had fought for them, and they had saved her in the only way they knew how. The snow continued to fall outside the den, but inside, surrounded by warmth and small bodies that trusted her absolutely, Sergeant Lyra Thane found something she'd thought lost forever in the horrors of war. She found peace. And in the days to come, when the Karathi elders arrived to collect their young, they would find a human soldier sleeping among 12 cubs, all covered in pelts, all breathing in synchronized rhythm. They would understand then what their human allies truly were, not just warriors, but guardians who would bleed themselves dry for those who couldn't fight back. The story would spread across the Karathi worlds, then across the coalition. But for now, in this quiet moment, it was just a wounded human and the cubs who refused to let her fade away alone.